Pick up that tray, rookie. You're in my yard now. The voice cuts through the noise like a whip, sharp, commanding, soaked in menace. The lunchtime chatter dies instantly. Even the guards, perched in their towers, pretend they didn't hear it. Tank Morrison stands at the center of the chaos, his massive frame outlined by the sun, tattoos crawling up his neck like vines. He doesn't need to raise his voice twice. People listen the first time. Across from him, a new inmate, tall, calm, dark-skinned, stands with a tray still in his hands. His name tag reads D. Williams, but no one here knows him. Not yet. You deaf or stupid? Tank growls, stepping closer, his boots crunching over gravel. When I tell you to move, you move. A ripple of tension spreads across the yard. You can feel it in the way conversations stop mid-sentence, in the way the kitchen workers freeze with spoons halfway to their mouths. Everyone knows what comes next. In Riverside Correctional, disrespect isn't a mistake. It's a death sentence. But Dante doesn't move. His head tilts slightly, his gaze level. There's no fear, no aggression, just stillness. The kind that feels like it's measuring distance, calculating risk. Tank laughs, a low rumble that makes his crew grin behind him. Oh, we got ourselves a philosopher. You think you're special, huh? Newsflash, pretty boy. Nobody's special in here. He grabs the tray and flips it, rice and beans splattering across Dante's shoes. Clean it up, the yard watches. The guards don't interfere. They never do when Tank's involved. Too much paperwork. Too much risk. Dante kneels slowly, expression unreadable. His fingers brush the spilled food, but he doesn't pick it up. Instead, he wipes his hands on his pants and stands again, eyes locking with Tank's. You done? His tone is even, quiet, like someone asking if a storm has passed. A murmur runs through the inmates. Nobody talks to Tank like that? Not in this lifetime. Tank's smirk falters, then returns twice as wide. You got jokes. Let's see how funny you are without teeth. He steps forward, chest to chest now. The sunlight glints off a jagged scar running across his jaw. His signature souvenir from 8 years of ruling the block. The punch comes fast. For a man his size, Tank moves with terrifying speed. But Dante moves faster. He doesn't block. He just shifts, a half step, a subtle angle, the kind of movement you only see from people who've spent a lifetime learning the geometry of survival. The blow misses by an inch, air cutting where a jaw should have been. For a split second, the yard is silent. Then Tank laughs again, forced this time. You duck good. Maybe you'll make a fine pet. He swings again, harder. Dante doesn't react. He drops his shoulder, pivots, and somehow Tank stumbles forward, losing balance. He catches himself, face reddening with disbelief. Nobody saw what happened. Not clearly. A few inmates exchange glances. One whispers, "Did you see that?" "Man moved like—" "Shut up," another hisses. "You didn't see nothing." The yard tension cracks like a whip when a siren blares. A guard yells, "Break it up!" Everyone scatters, pretending it's business as usual. Tank wipes sweat from his brow, eyes narrowing at Dante. "You got guts, rookie." But guts get spilled real easy in here. Dante says nothing. He picks up his overturned tray, walks calmly toward the mess hall doors, and disappears inside. For a long moment, Tank just stands there, breathing heavy. His crew waits for the usual show of force, the stomp, the order, the punishment. But he just stares at the doors. Something about that silence unsettles him. By the time he heads back to his table, word is already spreading. The new guy didn't flinch. The new guy made Tank miss. Inside the mess hall, Dante sits alone, tray empty, hands steady. Across from him, an older inmate named Rico leans in, voice low. "You don't know what you just did, man." That was Tank Morrison. "He runs this place." "I noticed," Dante replies, eyes still down. Rico studies him for a beat. "You military or something?" "Something." The way he says it makes Rico's stomach tighten. There's weight behind that word, something practiced, something trained. Later that night, in the cell block, Rico sees him again, sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slow and measured. Not praying, not meditating, just listening. Every sound, the distant clank of metal, the echo of boots, the rhythm of the night shift, cataloged and absorbed. Like a man memorizing a pattern. From the upper bunk, Rico whispers, "You planning something?" "No," Dante says quietly. "I'm remembering." Outside, Tank lights a cigarette in the yard, staring at the high walls. "Tomorrow," he mutters, smoke curling from his lips. Tomorrow he learns who runs this joint. He doesn't notice one of his own men glancing nervously at the rec yard cameras, or that one of them is already cracked, the lens dark. Somewhere in the control room, a security monitor flickers. Frame skip, glitch, then black. It's as if the prison itself just blinked. The next morning breaks over Riverside like a bruise. Purple haze over razor wire, the metallic taste of rain still clinging to the air. Breakfast is oatmeal and burnt toast, but everyone's appetite is gone. The story of yesterday's yard standoff has already mutated into legend. They say the new guy dodged a punch like smoke. They say Tank's hand still hurts. They say the guards saw it and said nothing, which means maybe, just maybe, the tide can turn. But in prison, tides only shift when blood spills. Tank sits at his usual corner table, surrounded by his crew. His right knuckle is swollen, wrapped in duct tape. He's trying to laugh, but it sounds hollow. "Man's lucky," he mutters, stirring his oatmeal with a plastic spoon. "Next time, I'll break him in half." One of his lieutenants, a scrawny tattooed guy named Styx, glances toward the far end of the hall. Dante sits alone again, calm, untouched by the noise. He eats with slow precision, eyes never lifting. "Boss," Styx says, "you sure you want to go again so soon?" Dude's weird. Moves like he's done time somewhere worse than here. Tank glares at him. "There ain't no place worse than here." He slams his spoon down. "He embarrassed me in my own yard. You think I'm letting that slide?" The laughter that follows is loud enough to draw attention, but Dante doesn't flinch. Instead, he wipes his mouth, pushes back his chair, and stands. Every conversation dies mid-sentence. The sound of his footsteps echoes through the hall, soft, measured, deliberate. He walks right past Tank's table, heading for the trash bin. Doesn't look at him. Doesn't slow down. Just exists, unbothered. That's what gets to Tank most. Not the disrespect, not the dodge, the indifference. Like he doesn't even matter. "Hey, ghost boy," Tank calls after him, sneering. "You got a death wish or just forgot where you are?" Dante pauses at the bin. For a moment, no one breathes. Then, without turning around, he says quietly, "I remember everything," and walks out. The words hit Tank like a riddle he can't solve. The table stays silent long after Dante's gone. Later that afternoon, Officer Leland leans against the control booth, sipping stale coffee, watching the monitors. "New fish in cellblock," he mutters. Dante Williams. Keeps to himself. No priors for violence, no gang ties. Doesn't make sense. Beside him, Officer Perez squints at the screen. "Doesn't make sense? You didn't see what he did to Tank. That man's got military reflexes." "Military, huh?" Leland scrolls through the intake file. "Says here he worked private security before he went off the grid." He frowns. "No employer listed. No license, just sealed records," Perez whistles low. "That's not normal." "Nope." On screen, Dante walks the perimeter alone, shadowed by Tank's men. Every movement looks calculated, like a man counting steps, angles, escape routes. Leland mutters, "You ever seen a guy that calm in here?" "Yeah," Perez says after a pause. Right before they snap, night comes early in Riverside. The yard lights flicker like dying stars, and the hum of generators fills the silence between shouts. Rico, Dante's cellmate, watches him again from the top bunk. "You keep doing that breathing thing," he says softly. "What's it for?" "Control." "Control of what?" "Everything that can't be controlled." Rico laughs nervously. "Man, you sound like a monk." "I'm not. You a fighter?" The question hangs in the air. Dante opens his eyes, pupils reflecting the dim light. "I was." Rico leans forward, curious. "Boxer?" "Different kind of ring." There's a scar along Dante's left knuckle, faint but deep, the kind that comes from years of bone meeting bone. Rico recognizes it from somewhere he can't place, maybe a poster, maybe a pay-per-view. But before he can ask, a whistle blares down the hallway. "Count time!" Guards stomp past, flashlights slicing through shadows. Dante stands still as they pass, gaze steady. When the beam crosses his face, Officer Perez pauses for just a second, eyes narrowing. "Where'd I see you before?" Perez murmurs, then shakes it off and keeps moving. Back in the control room, Leland scrolls through archived footage, chewing on his pen cap. The screen flickers, the same camera from yesterday's glitch. For 2 frames, Dante's silhouette moves so fast it blurs, then vanishes behind another inmate. "Jesus," Leland mutters. "That's not human speed," he rewinds. Frame by frame, the same blur, the same perfect timing. He leans closer and freezes the shot. Dante's stance, knees bent, hand raised in a guard position. Not defensive, professional. Leland picks up the phone. "Hey, Perez, do me a favor. Look up a name, Dante Williams, known alias The Ghost. Might be nothing, but check any fight records." Perez laughs on the other end. "You think we got an MMA champ locked up with Tank Morrison?" Leland doesn't laugh. "Just check." Meanwhile, in the rec yard, Tank corners one of the kitchen runners. "Tomorrow. Laundry room. Tell him I want to talk." The runner hesitates. "He ain't gonna show, Tank." Tank grins, cigarette glowing in the dark. "Oh, he'll show." They always show. He exhales a plume of smoke toward the moonlight. "Man wants control? Let's see how he does when I take it from him." In his cell, Dante sits perfectly still, eyes closed again. But this time, his hands tighten slowly, knuckles whitening. Somewhere deep in the rhythm of his breath, a switch flips. Tomorrow will not go how Tank expects. And the yard, the guards, even the walls of Riverside itself, will remember what happens next. By the time the next morning sun claws its way over Riverside's walls, the whole prison hums with a different kind of energy. Quiet, electric, like the air before a lightning strike. Something's coming. Everyone can feel it. The rumor moves faster than contraband. Tank Morrison's setting a trap. Word is the new guy's being pulled into a conversation in the laundry room. And around here, conversation means one of 2 things: blood or broken ribs. Inmates shuffle through breakfast pretending not to look at Dante. Some whisper warnings under their breath. Others smirk, betting cigarettes and ramen on how long he'll last. But Dante just sits there eating like it's any other day. Rico leans close. "You can't go in there, man. Tank's got 6 guys waiting. They don't fight clean." Dante looks up, spoon poised midair. "Fights only stay clean when fear's in the room." Rico blinks. "You got a death wish or something?" "No." Dante finishes his food, sets the tray down gently. "I got unfinished business. Tank's crew controls the laundry shift that day. 6 men in gray uniforms, all muscle and tattoos, pretending to fold sheets while stashing makeshift blades in dryer vents. The industrial fans were loud enough to drown out screams. Perfect cover. Tank himself stands near the far wall, arms crossed, a scar on his jaw catching the fluorescent light. "He's in his element. Ghost Boy thinks he's untouchable," he mutters to Styx. "Today we find out what's behind that calm." "Boss," Styx whispers. "What if it's true? What if he really was a fighter or—" Tank cuts him off with a glare. "Then he should have stayed retired." He spits on the floor just as the door creaks open. Dante walks in alone, eyes steady, sleeves rolled up. The guards stationed outside exchange glances but don't intervene. They've seen this play out before, except this time feels different. Tank's smirk widens. "Well, look who showed up." "You come to beg, rookie?" Dante stops 5 feet away, arms at his sides. "You wanted to talk," Tank chuckles. "Yeah, I wanted to talk about respect. See, in here, you earn it. You bleed for it. You bow for it. You understand?" Dante doesn't move. His gaze slides briefly to the corner camera, blinking red, then back to Tank. "I understand." "Good." Tank nods at his men. "Then show me." 2 of them lunge forward. It happens so fast, the rest barely see it. Dante sidesteps the first, grabs the second by the wrist, and twists. There's a sharp crack. The man howls, crumpling to the floor. Before the first can recover, Dante pivots, uses his weight, and flips him into a metal cart. Sheets scatter like ghosts. Gasps fill the room. Someone drops a shiv that clatters against the tile. Tank's grin vanishes. Get him! 4 men rush at once. The next moments blur into pure choreography, fluid, efficient, almost graceful. Dante moves like he's not fighting, just correcting mistakes. Each motion precise, minimal, final. No wasted energy. A knee strike folds one man's ribs. A palm thrust drops another. One swing of a drying rack handle sends the last sprawling. Then it's just Tank. For a moment, silence reigns. The dryers spin. Steam hisses. Tank breathes hard, disbelief written across his face. What are you? He mutters. Dante's voice is calm. The question is, who taught me to be this way? Tank roars and charges. Dante doesn't back up. He waits. 1 heartbeat, 2, and when Tank swings, Dante's arm flashes up, trapping the wrist, turning the momentum against him. The bigger man slams into a washer with a hollow bang, sliding down to the floor. Dante steps back, chest rising and falling once. It's over! Tank glares up, rage and humiliation mixing in his eyes. You think you can just walk away? I already did. He turns toward the exit, leaving Tank gasping in the smell of detergent and defeat. But before he reaches the door, something flickers in the corner of his vision. The camera light. Still blinking, he pauses, head tilting slightly. The light shouldn't be blinking. It should be steady. Dante steps closer, narrowing his eyes. Someone's tampered with it. It's recording on a private loop, one not connected to the main system. Someone wanted this on tape. He walks out, unbothered on the surface, but his mind's already turning. Someone in Riverside knows who he is. That evening, in the control booth, Officer Leland plays back the footage he secretly copied. What he sees makes him sit straighter. The movements, the control, the efficiency. He's seen that before, in a highlight reel years ago before the scandal. He whispers, "No way!" Perez leans in. "What?" Leland rewinds, zooms in on Dante's face. Sweat glistening, eyes locked, posture unmistakable. "Dante, the Ghost Williams," Leland says slowly. "The man who vanished after the Henderson fight." Perez frowns. "Wasn't that the guy who broke a champion's arm in 6 seconds? The one who—" "Yeah, the one who disappeared right after his brother was arrested for murder." The room goes silent except for the whir of the tape. Perez exhales. "So what's he doing here?" Leland watches the frozen frame, Dante's calm face amid chaos. Maybe he came to finish something. That night, Tank sits in the infirmary, hand bandaged, pride shattered. His men whisper that the rookie broke 2 of their ribs, left 1 with a concussion, but Tank doesn't hear them. He's staring at the cracked mirror beside his cot. "I'll kill him," he mutters. "I don't care who he was." Behind him, a shadow moves. Officer Leland standing just inside the door. "You'll get your chance," he says quietly. Tank narrows his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Leland steps closer, lowering his voice. "The warden's setting up something special." "A match. You against him. No guards, no rules. You win, your privilege is double. You lose." He shrugs. "Well, you won't lose, right?" Tank grins despite the pain. "Set it up." As Leland walks away, his expression hardens. He's not doing this for Tank. He's doing it for the truth. Because if Dante Williams is really who he thinks he is, this fight will prove it to everyone. And maybe, just maybe, it'll reveal what made the ghost disappear in the first place. Riverside's basement gym hadn't been used in years, at least not officially. The smell of rusted metal and sweat soaked into the concrete like ghosts refusing to leave. That's where Warden Briggs decided the match would happen. He called it a controlled discipline exercise. Everyone else called it what it was, a fight night. Only the select few were invited. Guards who looked the other way. Inmates who could keep their mouths shut, and Tank's loyal crew. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing like angry insects. Dante stood in the center of the ring, a makeshift square formed by benches and laundry carts, his hands loosely wrapped in prison-issue cloth. Across from him, Tank flexed his shoulders, blood still fresh under his fingernails. The warden leaned on the railing above, cigar smoke curling around his face. "You both volunteered," he said. "You both understand there are no interruptions. What happens here stays here." Tank cracked his neck. "Fine by me." Dante said nothing. The bell wasn't a bell at all, just a guard slamming a metal pipe against the bars. The sound echoed like thunder. Tank charged first, swinging with the confidence of a man who had never been challenged inside these walls. Dante sidestepped, smooth and silent, his expression unreadable. The next punch came faster. Tank's fists were heavy, wild. Dante's movements were calm water around a storm. He parried, ducked, pivoted. Every time Tank thought he'd landed a hit, he caught air. "Stop running, coward!" Tank roared, throwing a haymaker. That was the opening Dante had been waiting for. He slipped inside the punch, drove his elbow into Tank's ribs, followed by a sweep that sent the giant crashing onto the concrete. The crowd gasped. Dante stepped back, breathing even. Tank groaned, rolling to his knees. "You think this means anything?" Dante's voice was quiet. "It means I'm done hiding." He moved faster now, precision replacing restraint. A right hook, a spinning back kick. Tank staggered, struggling to block. For a man his size, pride was heavier than pain. Then, just as Dante went for the finishing move, a lightning-fast arm trap that used to end fights in seconds, he froze. For a split second, a flash of memory stabbed through his mind. Bright lights, a roaring crowd, a broken arm twisting the wrong way, and his opponent, Isaac Henderson, screaming in agony. Then blood. Cameras. Headlines. MMA champion ends career in brutal illegal move. Dante the Ghost Williams, from hero to monster. The memory snapped away, and Tank used that hesitation to swing. The blow caught Dante across the jaw. The crowd howled, but the mistake only woke something inside him. When Dante lifted his head, his eyes weren't calm anymore. They were dangerous. The ghost had returned. What followed wasn't a fight. It was anatomy, precise, mechanical, terrifying. Every strike Dante landed was deliberate. A rib, a knee, a shoulder. Tank tried to rise, but Dante's next move ended it. A sweep, a chokehold, silence. The room went dead quiet except for Tank's wheezing breath. Dante released him gently, almost mercifully, and stepped back. "I told you it was over," he whispered. Up in the rafters, Warden Briggs leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Interesting?" he murmured. "Very interesting." Officer Leland, standing beside him, couldn't look away. "That's not a street fighter," he said. "That's trained discipline." Briggs smirked. "He's more than that. He's leverage." Later that night, Dante sat alone in his cell, knuckles swollen, jaw bruised. The cell block was quiet, but he could feel eyes on him, from behind bars, through the darkness. Rico approached the bars cautiously. "Man, you just made history. Tank Morrison doesn't lose. Ever." Dante didn't answer. "You gonna tell me who you really are now?" Dante's eyes stayed on the floor. Names don't matter in places like this. "Then why are you here?" A long silence. Finally, Dante spoke, voice low and distant. "Because someone in this prison put my brother in the ground." Rico froze. "You mean, I'm not here to serve time," Dante said, eyes lifting, sharp as glass. "I'm here to find the man who killed him." The hallway lights flickered once, casting long, cold shadows over his face, and somewhere, in the warden's office, a private phone line rang. Briggs answered, lighting another cigar. "Yeah, he's here. Just like you said he'd be." A pause. Then a cold voice on the other end replied, "Good. Keep him breathing. Until I get there." 2 days after the fight, the entire prison felt different. Tank Morrison, once untouchable, now limped through the corridors with his arm in a sling and his pride in pieces. His crew scattered. Some transferred, some disappeared into solitary, others too afraid to even make eye contact with Dante. The legend of the ghost spread like wildfire. But Dante didn't celebrate. He trained, quietly. Every night after lights out, he shadowboxed in the corner of his cell. Slow, measured, precise. Each move was a conversation with ghosts. Rico finally broke the silence one night. "Man, I don't get it. You could have killed him. You didn't. You could have ruled this place. You don't!" Dante didn't stop moving. "That's not why I'm here," Rico frowned. "Then what are you here for, really?" Dante's fists slowed, then dropped to his sides. His voice came low. Justice. Not the kind they hand out in courts. The kind that doesn't need permission. Rico's eyes widened. He'd heard rumors of inmates saying that same word before something violent happened. That same night, in the warden's office, a file sat open on the desk. Williams, Dante, transfer request, sealed. Warden Briggs exhaled smoke, eyes on the paper. You said he'd come for you, he muttered into the phone. A man's voice came through the line, distorted, low, deliberate. He's not here for me, Briggs. He's here for the truth. But he doesn't know the truth yet, Briggs scowled. Then maybe I should tell him what really happened to his brother. No. A long pause. Not yet. Let him find the pieces himself. That's what'll break him. Click. The line went dead. The next morning, Dante was summoned to laundry duty, same room where he'd dropped Tank. A small mercy, maybe, but when he got there, something felt off. The guards weren't watching. Cameras pointed just slightly away, and someone had left a sealed envelope on the folding table. He looked around. No one spoke. He opened it. Inside, a single photograph. A man in a prison uniform. Darker skin, same eyes, same jawline, smiling weakly at the camera. Behind him stood the warden, and on the back of the photo, written in neat black ink, he didn't die in the riot. He was silenced. Dante's pulse slowed, but his vision narrowed, tunneling into the picture. His brother Marcus Williams. Official reports had said Marcus was killed in a gang dispute 3 years ago. But this was dated 2 months after his death. The walls felt like they were closing in. That night, Officer Perez found Dante still sitting on the edge of his bunk, holding the photo. You shouldn't have that, Perez said quietly. Dante didn't look up. You know who gave it to me? Perez hesitated. No, but I know what that means. You dig too deep here, you don't come back. Dante finally lifted his head, eyes cold. Then I dig faster, Perez swallowed. You think your brother was innocent? Dante's jaw tightened. I know he was. Perez sighed. Then you'd better start watching the people upstairs, not the ones behind bars. The real killers here don't wear orange. He turned to leave, but before stepping out, he added, word of advice, Ghost. If the warden starts offering you deals, it's already a setup. Meanwhile, deep in the security wing, Warden Briggs poured himself another drink. Show him the photo? One of the guards asked. Briggs smiled. Of course. Curiosity's the best leash. He'll go sniffing around, and when he gets too close, we'll decide whether to use him. Or bury him. The guard frowned. You sure it's smart to mess with a guy like that? Briggs looked out the window toward the yard where Dante trained under the moonlight, moving like a shadow. No man's a ghost, he said. Even the deadliest ones bleed. But when Dante looked up toward the tower, for just a heartbeat their eyes met. And in that single moment, the warden felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years inside Riverside. Fear. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of morning that seemed to sink into the bones of the prison itself. Riverside was quieter than usual, too quiet. Even the guards walked with their eyes down, as if they could feel something shifting under the concrete. Dante woke before dawn, same as always, but this time he wasn't shadowboxing. He was writing. Tiny words scrawled in the margin of a Bible he'd been issued when he arrived. A habit from his fighting days, when he used to study every opponent like scripture. Only now the names were different. Briggs, Perez, Security Wing, Marcus. He tore out the page, folded it twice, and slipped it into the hem of his jumpsuit. He'd learned something in his old life. Discipline wasn't just about hitting hard. It was about making every move mean something. By noon, the warden called him to the main office. Briggs's smile was smooth, too smooth. Mr. Williams, he said, emphasizing the name. You've been quite the celebrity lately. Word is, even the state commissioner's talking about you. Dante didn't sit. That why you called me in? Briggs chuckled. Partly. You see, the board wants to test your talents. A sanctioned fight. You against Tank Morrison. Officially this time. Dante's face didn't move. You want blood for entertainment. Not entertainment, Briggs said, steepling his fingers. Revenue, the system's underfunded, and our sponsors like a good redemption story. You're a name, Williams, a brand. Dante stared at him for a long time, then asked quietly, "And if I win?" Briggs leaned back. "Then you walk out of solitary. Maybe even early parole, depending on your behavior." Dante smiled faintly, but it wasn't humor. "And if I refuse?" The warden's eyes hardened. "Then maybe I stop protecting that brother of yours in the reports." Silence. The air thickened until it buzzed. Dante finally nodded once. "You set it up." That night, Rico caught him sitting in the corner, staring at the floor. "Bro, they saying they're bringing Tank back for a rematch?" Rico whispered. "You can't do that, man. He ain't the same. He's out for blood." Dante's jaw flexed. "Good. So am I." Rico shook his head. "That ain't you talking, Ghost. You told me once violence don't fix anything." "It doesn't," Dante said softly. "But sometimes it opens doors that stay locked otherwise." Rico leaned closer. "You got a plan, don't you?" Dante didn't answer. He only said, "Watch the warden during the fight. That's where the real story's hiding." 3 days later, the underground bout was set. The old laundry room was cleared out, ringed by guards pretending not to be there. The lighting flickered from bad wiring, shadows dancing across the cracked walls. A few inmates whispered prayers, others placed bets. And up in the observation, booth warden Briggs adjusted his tie, speaking into a hidden mic. "Everything's recorded, right?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Good. If he dies, I want footage proving Morrison started it." Down below, Dante rolled his shoulders, calm, quiet, unflinching. Tank entered shirtless, his body crisscrossed with scars and inked hate. "You should have stayed invisible," Tank growled. "Ghosts don't belong in the real world." Dante's eyes didn't blink. "Neither do monsters." The first punch came fast, Tank charging with brute rage. Dante ducked, moved like liquid, the crowd gasping as Tank's momentum carried him into the wall. The second strike cracked ribs. The third sent blood splattering, but Dante wasn't aiming to kill. He was aiming to reveal. He circled Tank like a hunter, forcing him backward, step by step, until Tank stumbled into the pile of dirty laundry and a small metal box clattered out. The fight froze. The box burst open, scattering folded envelopes marked "Confidential, Internal Affairs." The guards moved instantly, shouting, trying to cover the mess, but it was too late. Dante bent down and picked up one, the first page stamped with his brother's name. "Marcus Williams, deceased, non-inmate incident, classified." A photograph slipped free. Marcus in handcuffs beside Warden Briggs, alive weeks after his reported death. The crowd went silent. Then Dante looked up, straight at the booth window. For the first time, Briggs's smug grin disappeared. Dante let the paper fall. "Guess ghosts aren't the only ones hiding secrets," he said softly. Later that night, in solitary, Dante heard the door creak. Officer Perez slipped inside, closing it quietly. "You found it, didn't you?" Dante's voice was low, steady. "He killed my brother." Perez shook his head. "Not directly. He covered for the men who did. A transfer gone wrong. Your brother found out they were selling inmate labor off record. They silenced him, and Briggs made it disappear." Dante stood slowly, every muscle tightening. "Then I'll make him disappear." Perez sighed. "Don't be stupid. You're already winning. The footage is out. The truth's coming." But Dante just stared at the wall, whispering almost to himself, "The truth doesn't walk out of this place. It has to fight its way out." Outside, thunder rolled over Riverside, and in the distance, Briggs poured another drink, watching a security feed of Dante's cell. His reflection flickering in the screen. "You want war, Ghost?" he muttered. "Then you'll get one." He lifted the glass in a mock toast. "To the last fight." The laundry room felt smaller now that everyone knew what was under the linen, and the light bulbs seemed more honest. Flickerless, glaring, stripping the room of any pretense. News traveled in prisons the way smoke drifts through a vent. Slow at first, then suddenly the whole place was breathing it. Tank Morrison's name no longer carried only menace. It carried a question mark. Dante's name carried a rumor that would not die. They brought them back to the same circle of benches and carts. No official paper trail for this reunion, just a line of guards pretending not to watch. The warden sat higher than the rest, his posture a calculated kind of calm that meant he was betting on someone else's fall. The crowd pressed close, the air thick with sweat, breath, and the metallic tang of tension. Tank swaggered in as if he owned the building itself. He had a new limp and a new sheet of bravado, like a man who'd reheated his rage for the audience. He flicked an old toothpick in his mouth, an absurd human tick for a man who otherwise played carved stone. That tiny, ridiculous gesture was the only flash of vanity the yard ever saw from him. "You gonna make it quick this time?" Tank barked, folding his hands as if he were about to count his money. "Or you gonna weep like the rest?" Dante stepped forward without a theatrics. His jaw was a black line of focus, his knuckles still scabbed from the last fight. He didn't shout, didn't taunt. He moved like someone who had rehearsed silence into a weapon. People leaned in. Even officers nearest the door, bound by protocol, code, and a union rule that a private brawl still required paperwork, held their breath. When the shove came, Tank's opening gamble, Dante absorbed it with a kind of minimal choreography. He didn't fight like a man desperate for survival. He fought like a man who had spent a career understanding leverage, where to meet force, so that force became its own undoing. A rib-by-rib strategy unfolded. Dante moved inside Tank's reach and made the big man's mass a liability. He used Tank's weight to spin him, to place him on concrete with noise that echoed like a verdict. There were no wild swings, no gratuitous brutality, only a clinical unwrapping of strength. Each strike looked like an answer to an invisible question. When Dante landed the finishing hold, it wasn't a flourish. It was an annotation in a ledger. This is how things balance. Somewhere during the third minute, a guard's phone buzzed, an obscene, bright sound that ruptured the hush. Someone cursed. The moment proved fragile. The yard could have splintered back into chaos. Instead, the inmates watched, mouths open as Tank flailed and then stilled. Dante did not kill him. He did not humiliate him beyond repair. He pressed Tank's face to the ground long enough for the man to taste defeat and nothing else. Then he got off. He let the human beast breathe and rot in humiliation from within, which was, in Dante's estimation, a slower, truer justice. There was shouting afterward. Some inmates cheered. Some scolded him for not finishing the job. Rico, from the periphery, met Dante's eyes and gave a small, confused nod. People still argued whether mercy in a place built on vengeance was a weakness or a kind of power. Dante thought about that for a second and then kept walking. But the fight had been never only about Tank. As Dante stepped away, he let his actions pull the thread that had been tucked into the top of the warden's jacket. A file, a photograph, the list of names that had kept Marcus Williams buried under an official report. When Tank went down, a small metal clasp from the warden's pocket skittered across the concrete. It clattered like a truth on a tin roof. Immediately, opportunists did what they always did. They searched the pockets, the corners, the trash. Someone found a fresh envelope that had been slipped inside a laundry bag, stamped with internal affairs insignia and a list of transfers that did not match the official ledger. The paper made a sound in the light like paper does when a lie is exposed. A guard, one who'd been reluctant earlier, snatched it and held it out, shaking. "Look at this!" His voice cracked with something like shame. Dante didn't need to read it to know what it meant. He had the photo in his head, the handwriting on the back that had said, "He was silenced." He had the echo of his brother's laugh. He had the rusted knowledge that power protected itself with paper and men. Officer Leland, who had been discreetly copying footage for days, pushed forward and projected a clip onto the wall. It showed a transfer manifest, signatures, dates, a bureaucratic ghost trail that pointed to unauthorized labor shipments and a short list of men who'd profited. Briggs' signature was there. So was the fact that Marcus had discovered a route and paid for it with his life. The room reacted like an organism. Some faces crumpled, some hardened. The warden's smile thinned into a hard line. He had played the long game and now watched the moment he tried to shape escape from between his fingers. "Order!" he shouted, but the word felt small and unanchored. The union's rule book and the DA's policies about chain of custody and sealed records, the realistic legal fact that an internal affairs investigation must be opened when credible evidence arises, those were now a tide moving in Dante's direction. Paperwork would be cited. Subpoenas might come. Sealed files could be unsealed if a prosecutor smelled something rotten. Tank scrambled up, rage hot as blood. He was a different man now, hated and laughed at simultaneously. His crew, sensing the shift, melted into the crowd. The warden barked into a radio, voice sharp. He had contingency plans. He had men willing to burn evidence. But a public fight had created public witnesses. The truth had a new body, dozens of inmates, several officers, and a single recording device that had caught the laundry room box, spilling its contents. Dante walked to the middle of the room and looked at the faces before him. Guards, inmates, men who had built careers from shadows. He lifted the photograph of Marcus, the one from the envelope, and held it up like a relic. "He deserved better than a file," Dante said, voice steady and low. "He deserved the truth." His statement was simple and moral. It was a line that cut across bars and badges and business negotiations. People murmured. Someone started a chant, part accusation, part prayer. That night, whispers would become petitions. A formal complaint would be written. An outside attorney would be called because in the world outside Riverside, sealed records could topple men if someone pressed hard enough. Briggs retreated to his office, face a map of brittle decisions. He would order transfers, threaten witnesses, and call favors. He would try to spin this. That was what men in power did. But the cage around him had a new reshaping force now, a man who had been trained to find edges and pry them open. Dante had used muscle to make the wound visible. Now the law and public pressure would do the rest. As the crowd dispersed, Rico caught Dante's elbow and squeezed. "What now?" he asked quietly. Dante looked at the dark sky choked with prison lights and said, "Now we make sure the world outside notices what happened in here." People still argued whether the spectacle of justice was less noble than quiet reparation. Dante didn't have time for that argument. He only knew the immediate fact. The first layer of truth had been revealed. The second layer, the double reveal, the reason Marcus had been silenced, and the name of the man who'd pulled the strings, was still somewhere between the warden's safe and the governor's calendar. Dante intended to pull it out by any lawful, unlawful, and cunning means necessary. Outside the yard, a news van engine idled once, as if listening. The storm came the next morning. Not rain, but reckoning. Helicopters hovered over Riverside by sunrise, their blades thudding like war drums. News crews lined the outer fences, cameras flashing through chain link as reporters shouted names they'd only just learned. Warden Briggs, Marcus Williams, the ghost. For years, Riverside had been a forgotten box of human ruin. Now, it was front-page justice. Inside, chaos had a rhythm. Guards whispered instead of barking orders. Inmates moved in packs, murmuring about the files, the video, the fight. Nobody knew how the footage leaked, only that it did. A short, grainy clip of Dante's final confrontation, Tank hitting the floor, and papers marked confidential fluttering into view. The video hit the internet overnight. The public devoured it by breakfast. Free the Ghost trended before noon. In the warden's office, Briggs stood at the window, tie loosened, face pale. "They've frozen my accounts," he said, voice quivering. "State's sending investigators. They're talking about—" "Removal," finished Officer Perez, standing near the door unarmed. "They're talking about removal, sir. And maybe charges." Briggs turned, eyes burning. "You think I built this place just to lose it to some washed-up fighter with a sob story?" Perez didn't blink. You built this place on lies, and he's the first man who learned how to fight back with truth. Briggs reached for his drawer. Perez stepped forward, too fast, too sure, and a gun clattered to the floor before the warden could touch it. Don't, Perez said quietly. You're not dying the easy way. For a moment, silence. Then the intercom crackled. Warden Briggs, State Inspector General on line 1. Briggs didn't answer. Perez did. He's busy, he said flatly, and walked out. In the mess hall, Dante sat alone, food untouched, the air around him still tense as wire. Rico slid in across from him, glancing toward the guards. Man, it's all over the news. They're calling you a hero, saying you uncovered a cover-up. Dante shook his head. I didn't uncover it. I just stopped hiding from it. Rico grinned faintly. Same thing, ain't it? A loudspeaker crackled. Inmate Williams, pack your belongings. Immediate transfer. The whole hall froze. Every inmate turned. Some clapped quietly, others bowed their heads. Even the guards stood still. Dante rose, slow and deliberate, like a man walking through fog he already knew by heart. Rico stood too. You think they're really letting you out? Dante gave a small, tired smile. That's what transfer means. Whether it's freedom or a new cage, we'll see. He turned, stepping into the corridor where 2 state officers waited. Not prison guards, but suits. One held a file. The other carried a sealed envelope. Mr. Williams, the taller one said, the governor's office asked to meet you personally. They led him to an unmarked car outside the gates. The air smelled different out there, colder, honest somehow. For the first time in years, Dante saw the sky without bars across it. Where are we going? He asked. The officer beside him glanced down at the file. Officially? A debrief at state headquarters. Unofficially? Someone up top wants to say thank you. The drive was long. Miles of silence, the kind that felt earned. Dante stared at his reflection in the window. Older, leaner, but not broken. The reflection of a man who'd gone through hell and brought proof back. When they arrived, the building wasn't what he expected. Not marble or grandeur, just a plain state office, walls beige and tired. Inside, an older man in a dark suit waited with a folder in hand. Mr. Williams, he said, shaking Dante's hand. I read your case. I read your brother's, too. Then you know he didn't die in a riot. The man nodded. We know. And thanks to what you uncovered, we have grounds to reopen every transfer case tied to Briggs's operation. You may have saved hundreds. Dante's throat tightened. He didn't speak. The man handed him a thin envelope. Official pardon. Effective immediately. You walk out of here today. Dante didn't open it. He just stared, silent. That's not why I did it. I know, the man said softly. But it's why you deserve it. 3 weeks later, Dante stood in front of a modest building in Chicago's South Side, an old boxing gym that once bore his brother's name, Williams Brothers Youth Center. The sign had faded, the paint cracked, but it still stood. He pushed the door open. Dust motes danced in sunlight. A single heavy bag hung from the ceiling, deflated and tired. He ran his fingers across it, remembering every hit he and Marcus had thrown here, every laugh, every dream. From behind him came a voice, soft, familiar. You really came back. Officer Perez stepped out of the shadows, dressed in plain clothes. Told you I'd quit when the truth got out. Dante smiled faintly. You keeping an eye on me? Perez shrugged. Call it probation with a view. They both laughed. The first real laugh Dante had in years. Perez reached into his pocket and handed him a small flash drive. Last piece of the puzzle, he said. Marcus recorded something before he died. I found it buried in the evidence room. Dante hesitated, then took it. That night, in the quiet of the gym, he played it. The screen flickered. Marcus's face appeared, tired but determined. If you're watching this, it means they tried to bury me. Don't let them. Tell the truth, little brother, no matter what it costs. The video ended. Dante sat there for a long time, tears tracing the edges of his smile. He whispered, I did, Marcus. I did. Outside, kids' voices echoed, laughter spilling in from the street. He opened the gym door wider. Come on in, he called out. Let's see if you can throw a real jab. They ran in, sneakers squeaking on old floors, energy filling the place like sunlight. The ghost was gone. What stood there now was a man, and Riverside, it would never be the same. Because truth, once it breathes free air, never goes back behind bars. If this story reminded you that real strength isn't about power, it's about purpose, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Have you ever seen someone judged by where they came from instead of what they carried inside? Share your story in the comments. Your voice might inspire our next tale of redemption and truth. And here's a little challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. There's a quiet moment around minute 7:14, when Dante pauses before leaving the yard, his hand brushing the concrete where Tank once stood. That small gesture says everything about why he really fought, and who he was fighting for. Rewatch that scene and tell us what you noticed. Because in this prison, just like in life, every scar tells the truth, if you know how to read it.